She did not resist when they handcuffed her at the shooting range. No name tag, no explanation. Just a silent woman hitting targets that seemed impossible and steadfastly refusing to reveal her identity. The courtroom in the town of Coastal Haven was prepared for a routine arraignment until the heavy wooden doors opened. A Navy admiral in full dress uniform stepped inside, walking silently down the center aisle. The veterans in the room stood at attention. The judge's face paled as she opened the sealed envelope. And from that moment on, everything changed. Dawn had just broken over a remote civilian shooting range along the Maine coast. Mist clung to the targets as shooters began to arrive. Among them was a woman in her mid-30s. Nothing remarkable about her. A plain gray jacket, faded jeans, a low-pulled baseball cap. She walked straight to the farthest lane, carrying a long case, possibly for a professional camera or a musical instrument. Fred Langner, the range safety officer, sipped his morning coffee and observed from his small cabin. 22 years in the Navy, followed by a decade managing the range, had trained his eyes well. He could categorize shooters instantly: hunters, sport shooters, police trainees, and weekend warriors. But this woman was different. She set up her rifle with the practiced ease of someone with years of experience. Her first shots dead center. Then, without adjusting her scope, she shifted to targets at increasingly distant ranges. Fred noted her breathing. A steady 4-count rhythm, breath held, trigger squeezed with a soft exhale, and wind adjusted by instinct. Another shooter approached, whispering, "She's hitting targets that should be impossible with that rifle. And she's not wearing a badge." 20 minutes later, 2 local officers arrived. They approached, hands near their holsters. "Sorry, ma'am. We need to see your ID and firearms permit." The woman turned, hands visible, her gaze calm. "I don't have them with me. No phone, no wallet. Just a keycard with no identifying marks and a small notebook filled with coordinates. You'll need to come with us." She didn't object, didn't speak, accepted the handcuffs, which unsettled the officers more than if she had resisted. As they drove away, Fred noticed. Her eyes kept scanning the trees, the roads, the distant ridgelines, as if calculating something only she understood. The Coastal Haven police station was small. 3 holding cells, 1 intake area, 2 detective offices. The woman remained silent through fingerprinting. No name, no address, no reaction when reminded that refusing to identify herself was illegal. Inspector Lucas Varen took turns interrogating her, trying every approach, conversation, threats, federal law warnings. All met with respectful silence. A young officer brought her water. As she accepted it, her sleeve slipped up, revealing a distinct scar. A mark left by specialized training, like fast roping from a helicopter. "That scar, climbing accident?" "Climbing accident," she answered, her first words in hours. By afternoon, the appointed public defender arrived, Counselor Anton Richter, tired and frustrated. "You're making this much harder. They're talking about terrorism threats. That rifle you used? Unregistered." The next morning, tension filled the Coastal Haven courtroom. Townspeople packed in. Reporters from Portland. A few men in black suits scattered among the crowd. Judge Marion Keller reviewed the file, frowning. At the defense table, the woman sat silent, next to a visibly confused lawyer. "Your Honor, I request a postponement. We're unprepared." A man stood up. "I'm Agent Pascal Huber, Department of Homeland Security. We request federal custody of the defendant." Another interrupted. "I'm with the FBI. This falls under federal investigation." Judge Keller banged her gavel. "This is still my courtroom. We will proceed with arraignment. The defendant is charged with possession of an unregistered firearm, refusal to identify, and suspected threat to national security." The woman remained motionless. The courtroom doors burst open. All eyes turned. An admiral entered, Admiral Henrik Mahler, full dress uniform, medals gleaming. 2 officers flanked him. Veterans in the room stood at attention. Even the judge straightened her back. The admiral handed a sealed envelope to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. She read it, her expression changed. Surprise, then solemnity. With documentation from the Department of Defense, I hereby dismiss all charges immediately. This case is now classified. Silence. The bailiff removed the handcuffs. Only then did the woman speak, her voice low but sharp. Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience. Admiral Mahler replied clearly. On the contrary, we apologize to you, Commander Elise Wernhardt. Every military man in the room snapped to attention. Judge Keller, a former military legal officer, stood and nodded to them both. Thank you for your cooperation. Outside, Sheriff Alaric Moreau approached. With all due respect, I need an explanation. We believed she was a threat. She's a senior operative. Black-level clearance. No threat at all. Quite the opposite. Lucas Varenne stepped closer. Commander, I'm sorry for what happened. She looked him straight in the eyes. No need. You were just doing your job. An elderly veteran stepped forward. Hello, ma'am. I used to be a corpsman with the Marines. I recognized something in the way you stood. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you once did, she replied. Admiral Mahler checked his watch. We have to go, Commander Wernhardt. Operation Silent Harbor is awaiting your debrief in Washington. Lucas Varenne's eyes widened. Silent Harbor, that was the operation that thwarted a port attack last year? Commander Wernhardt has served for 12 years. Most of her work will never be known, but that doesn't make it any less critical. Later, Lucas received an invitation to Naval Station Norfolk to attend a medal ceremony for Commander Elise Wernhardt. No media, no photography. During the private event, Admiral Mahler declared, "She is one of our top operatives in counterterrorism and unconventional warfare. During Operation Silent Harbor, she eliminated 16 targets over 11 months while undercover." Lucas couldn't hide his emotion. After the ceremony, he approached her. "I want to apologize again." "No need. You followed protocol. Exactly what a professional should do. That's why I chose you." 6 months later, Lucas Varenne joined NCIS. One day, he received a message from an unknown number. "Some of us are always watching. Elise." And so a new chapter began. 7 months later, clouds blanketed the sky above Maine's coast. Fred Langner arrived early at the range. As he entered the office, the lights were already on. "Anyone here?" he called out, hand brushing against the small pistol hidden in the drawer. "Just me, Fred." Elise Wernhardt was seated at the desk, studying a satellite map. "Didn't expect you back so soon. It's been nearly 9 months, she cut in. "And this isn't a courtesy visit." Fred nodded. "Inspector Varenne called yesterday, said I should be ready. He's a fast learner. We need full access to the range for the next 72 hours. No one else allowed." Fred raised an eyebrow. "During hunting season?" She slid an envelope across the desk. Fred peeked inside, a check large enough to fund the range for half a year. "Just like last time, I'll say yes," he smiled. "But I know how your people operate." The next morning, the range had transformed into a tactical operations hub. Camouflage trucks, satellite antennas, officers in civilian clothing, but carrying a distinct air of authority. Lucas Varenne arrived last, bringing equipment from NCIS headquarters. "Thanks for lending the space, Fred. When the country calls, I don't say no, especially when Commander Wernhardt is the one calling." Lucas smiled. She has a way of getting people to say yes, without having to say much. At the command tent, Elise began the briefing. "We've identified a security threat within a 50-mile radius. 3 suspicious locations. We need to pinpoint the enemy's operational hub, without drawing attention." Lucas studied the map. 2 residential zones. 1 commercial warehouse. A direct approach will spook them. "Exactly," Elise replied. "That's why we need someone who understands the boundary between military and civilian spheres. Someone like you." The operation began. Elise's team handled electronic surveillance and intelligence infiltration. Lucas coordinated with local police, establishing a cover story and contingency plans. Fred watched from the sidelines. These weren't regular soldiers. They communicated through eye contact and silent gestures. That night, a listening team intercepted encrypted signals from the Riverside warehouse. "We've got movement. 8 individuals, armed and equipped with comms." Elise quickly analyzed. "We have legal grounds, but to protect the unit's anonymity, we'll need to hand this over to local enforcement." Lucas nodded. "I'll call the special response team." "Only share the essentials," she reminded. "Don't mention our team." The raid occurred at dawn. The local tactical unit swept in, with Elise's team providing remote support. No shots fired. No casualties. 8 suspects detained. A weapons cache and strategic data were recovered. The press release read, "A joint operation between federal and local agencies, prompted by an anonymous tip." By noon, Elise's team had erased all traces. Fred reset the range to its original state. Lucas stayed to help rehang the targets. "Thanks for everything, Fred." "For what?" "According to the news, I didn't do anything." "Exactly." Before departing, Elise approached Fred. "This range seems to attract quiet professionals. Just a place for people to hone their skills," Fred replied. "Some just happen to have more specialized skills." She handed him a business card with only a phone number. "If you come across someone with unusual abilities, call this number." Recruiting. Always. The right people are rare, and even harder to spot. 3 days later, a young woman around 20 arrived to shoot. Flawless technique. Meticulous notes. Adjusted for wind without instruments. Fred noticed. She reminded him of Elise. Too good to be a hobbyist. That evening, he called the number Elise had given him. "Blue water. Still horizon. Go ahead. I met someone interesting. Shooting skills and technique like a special forces trainee. We'll investigate. Anything else?" "She reminds me of one of yours. There is no active record under the name Elise Wernhardt." "Understood. Just curious." 3 days later, the girl returned, this time accompanied by a man with a distinctly military bearing. After they finished shooting, the man walked up to Fred. "Mr. Langner, is it? I heard you made a call a few days ago." Fred remained calm. "That's right. You've got a sharp eye." "She's in the assessment phase. Part of the test is seeing if she gets spotted." The young woman approached. "Did I give myself away?" "Not even an hour," the man replied. "What detail gave me away?" Fred smiled. "You adjusted for wind without instruments. Commander Wernhardt did the same." The 2 operatives exchanged a glance. "May I continue practicing here?" the girl asked. "Of course. But next time, maybe miss a few shots if you want to blend in." Before leaving, the man handed Fred an envelope. "Thank you for your help. Inside is a new contact card with the insignia of Naval Special Operations. If you're open to long-term collaboration, this is your starting point. Maybe it's time I did more than just look after a shooting range." The next morning, Fred arrived to find a large wooden crate at the doorstep. Inside, a high-end pair of binoculars and an encrypted communication device. The note that came with it had just 3 words. "Keep watching, Fred." The handwriting was unmistakable. Elise. Fred understood he was no longer just a range keeper. He was now a quiet conduit in a network silently protecting the nation. When the young ones came, those with impossible skill sets and untraceable backstories, he knew what to do. Because as Elise once said, "Some of us are always here. You just don't see us, unless you know how to look." An early winter settled over Northern Europe. In a narrow alley in Hamburg, Germany, a spy was shot dead just hours after sending a distress signal to a military comms channel deactivated 5 years ago. His final message contained just 2 words: "Snow Lantern." At NCIS's European Communication Branch, Agent Lucas Varenne had just finished his year-end report when he received a call from an encrypted number. The voice on the line was low, familiar. "Varenne, I need you in Reykjavik within 36 hours. No luggage. No team. No questions." He straightened. "It's you. We need to end this before winter truly begins." In Reykjavik, Lucas entered a small seaside cafe. Snow fell steadily. A woman in a leather coat and sunglasses sat alone with a handwritten notebook. As he approached, she closed it. "Hello again, Agent Varen." She took off the glasses. It was Elise Wernhardt, changed now. Short hair, an aura as cold as the northern wind. Lucas said nothing. He sat. Elise pulled a USB drive from the lining of her coat. Snow Lantern is a code name for a counterintelligence faction operating in the shadows of both NATO and the EU. A deep structure, masquerading as international security, while doing the opposite. "How deep have they gone?" Lucas asked. "Deep enough to order my arrest without explanation. Smart enough to vanish the moment you shine a light on them." 48 hours later, at an abandoned NATO base on the French-German border, a secret meeting was underway. In attendance, Elise, Lucas, and 3 others. Arnaud Mahler, grandson of Admiral Henrik Mahler, encryption specialist. Lena Kovacs, former Hungarian intelligence, now overseeing Eastern European networks. Torge Rasmussen, Norwegian field operative, skilled in combat and counter-surveillance. Elise began. "Snow Lantern isn't new. They've been around since the Cold War and recently reactivated. But this time they aren't just spying. They're staging false flag terror attacks, selling intel on defensive vulnerabilities to both sides." Lucas exhaled. "A shadow within the shadow." Elise nodded. "We'll have to break the rules. Our target is in the heart of Brussels, a fake intelligence HQ disguised as a security consultancy." Lena asked, "Do we have approval?" "No, which is exactly why it will work," Elise replied. Operation Glacier Whisper began. Lucas breached EU data systems. Arnaud staged a cyber attack that exposed Snow Lantern's real IP. Torge and Lena oversaw the field perimeter. Elise infiltrated the building under the identity of a NATO advisor who'd gone missing 3 months earlier. On site, Lucas monitored from a tech van. "Elise, you have 2 minutes. Local police are closing in. No diplomatic cover this time." Inside, Elise found a biometric data vault, fingerprints, DNA, and movement history for thousands of agents worldwide. She plugged in the USB. 1 minute. 2. The indicator turned red. Lucas shouted into comms. "It's a trap." Steel doors slammed shut. Elise was trapped. 30 minutes later, a black, unmarked helicopter retrieved her from a landing zone 15 miles outside Brussels. Lucas was there, waiting. "I thought you wouldn't make it." "I didn't," Elise replied. "I left a layer of fake data behind to bait them. They'll follow the wrong trail. We've got what we need." A week later, the European security commander resigned, no explanation given. 3 Snow Lantern facilities in Austria, the Netherlands, and Lithuania were restructured following internal audits. No media coverage. Just one encrypted line in a classified dispatch. Glacier Whisper. Success. Operatives dissolved into mist. Lucas returned to NCIS Europe. On his desk, a sealed envelope. Inside, a marked map, a key, and a handwritten note. "Winter's coming faster than we thought. Varen. Stay warm. Wernhardt." He smiled. Maybe Snow Lantern hadn't fully melted. And maybe they still needed people like him. The Baltic Sea was gray and silent beneath the February sky, like a frozen mirror about to crack. Lucas Varen stood on the deck of a Norwegian patrol ship, eyes on the snowy horizon. Nearly 3 weeks had passed since Glacier Whisper, the secret strike in Brussels that dismantled Snow Lantern with surgical precision. But as Elise once warned, every shadow has another layer. "You shouldn't be here," came a voice behind him. Commander Elise Wernhardt stood beside him, dressed in marine gear and a heavy coat. This time, no disguise, no aliases, just her, a real operative, fully present in the biting wind. Lucas didn't turn. "I don't even know who us is anymore, Elise. Doubt is the price of living in the gray. I used to think the gray still had lines." She paused. "It did. They've been erased." At a covert naval base in Norway's Lofoten Islands, 4 figures sat around a large touchscreen display. Elise, Lucas, and 2 new allies, Sigrid Nystrom, Swedish intelligence officer, icy gaze, photographic memory. Jacob Vasiliev, half Russian, half Polish tech specialist. Former double agent, now under supervision. Elise opened with satellite images of a covert signal station between two commercial ports in Gdansk, Poland. 3 weeks ago, an old Soviet cargo ship docked here, bypassing all security checks. It vanished from radar for exactly 3 hours, then reappeared 2 tons lighter. Lucas frowned. So we think it left something behind? Weapons? Surveillance gear? No, Elise said. We believe it left someone behind. Intelligence from Norway and Latvia matched. 2 senior operatives had vanished without trace. One was Elise's former commander in Afghanistan. This is a war of trust, Lucas, she said later, back at the office. I don't trust anyone anymore, Elise. Just you. And I trust only one person. That night, Elise sat alone in an abandoned greenhouse behind the port. Lucas approached. In her hands, a chart of sea routes from Kaliningrad to Bergen, red lines drawn in ink. We'll intercept them here, she pointed, to a small inlet off the Estonian coast. I can't do this alone anymore, Lucas. He nodded. No hesitation. The operation took place under cover of darkness. No insignia, no orders, no official presence. The ghost ship was identified. Elise commanded from a support vessel. Lucas led the boarding team via inflatable boat. Inside, they uncovered a signal station transmitting encrypted NATO and EU intel disguised as satellite weather data. And among the equipment, they found someone unexpected, Jacob Vasiliev. You betrayed us? Lucas asked through clenched breath. Jacob smirked. No, I was betrayed first. Elise stared into his eyes. There are more layers than you think. Snow Lantern is just one branch. The tree is still alive, and its roots are inside your headquarters. The next day, Elise stood alone at an old observatory on the Bergen coast. A map spread before her. Lucas joined, tired, reflective. Do you think we're winning? No, but we're headed in the right direction. She looked out to sea. You know why I chose the Baltic for this mission? Lucas shook his head. Because here, nothing has clear borders. It's cold, faded, easy to forget. But in the frost, every step leaves a mark. Nothing truly disappears, if someone knows how to look. She folded the map and stood up. There's someone we need to find, and we're almost there. Behind the still waves, a hidden storm was brewing. Silent Harbor, no longer the name of a single operation, but now the code name for a secretive response network, was about to launch its largest pursuit to date, where betrayal was no longer a surprise, but the price of survival. Snow fell softly on the glass dome of Copenhagen Central Station. Commuters passed without noticing the woman in a long black coat, walking slowly, short dark hair, hand gripping a secure briefcase. Commander Elise Wernhardt wasn't fleeing, wasn't hiding. She simply blended into the background. Lucas Varen waited at the east exit. No weapons, no comms. Only a fragile trust placed in the woman who had led him time and again into the gray zones of an unnamed war. The last signal came from a basement under an abandoned clinic 2 blocks away. Elise said, no greeting, no small talk. Lucas nodded. The source? You're sure it's him? A beat passed. Elise's eyes stayed on the pavement. I'm sure. I got his authentication code. His digital signatures intact. Only one person knows how to sync a key to a breathing rhythm. Soren Wernhardt died in that Syria op 3 years ago, Elise. She turned to him. I know. Her voice didn't tremble. No grief, only something deeper than loss. But if someone reused his codes, or worse, if he's still alive, I need to know. The abandoned clinic had been off the registry since 1997. The front door was welded shut, but Elise led Lucas through the alley between 2 buildings. The back door didn't open with force, but with a code. A hand familiar with analog locks older than her. You still remember how to crack mechanical safes? Lucas asked. The man who taught me was obsessed with antique watches. None of us trusted anything that could be hacked. Inside, Dim hallway. The air reeked of rust and expired antiseptic. At the end, an unregistered sublevel. And there, a lone figure waited. The low light from a desk lamp fell on the man's face. Sharp jaw, storm gray eyes, short graying hair. He had changed, but Elise knew instantly. Soren. The man stood, showing no surprise. You shouldn't have come. Lucas stepped back. He's your husband. Elise nodded, but her eyes never left Soren. How long have you worked for Snow Lantern? Soren exhaled, as if he had been preparing for this question for years. Since I died. Exactly 3 years. But not in the way you think. I didn't betray anyone. I became the hidden piece in our own game. Elise's hand clenched. Then why no contact? Why let me believe you were dead? Because the one person you trusted most in NCIS sold out my intel. I was extracted, kept alive as leverage. When I escaped, Snow Lantern had vanished. And I was officially dead. No path back. Lucas interjected. Then the data you sent Elise? Soren looked at both of them. Because I found something worse than Snow Lantern. A deeper network embedded within the counterintelligence services themselves. No files. No names. But they control those in power. Elise gave a cold laugh. There's always another layer. Soren gestured. Come. There's something you need to see. The secondary sublevel was a hidden signal operations hub, built by Soren after his escape. It tracked satellite packets routed to a small island off the Polish coast. Each packet contained a directive encrypted for operatives within a nameless organization. Snow Lantern was merely the visible tip. They call it La Nebuleuse, the nebula. No symbol, no borders, but they're engineering crises to restructure global security. And their next move? Lucas asked. Soren looked at Elise. They plan to reactivate the autonomous submarine fleet designed by a European alliance back in 2012, never deployed. It's now beneath the Baltic. If they gain control, they can disable all coastal defense systems from Norway to the UK. Elise stepped into the corridor. Cold. Her thoughts spun. For a moment, she wanted to collapse. But then Lucas's hand rested gently on her shoulder. We have to end this. Right now. 2 nights later, a team of 6, Elise, Lucas, Soren, Sigrid, Torge, and a naval spec ops officer, silently breached an underwater control station beneath the Baltic Sea, the activation node for La Nebuleuse's chain reaction. No headlines, no briefings. If they failed, no one would remember their names. For the first time, Lucas wasn't following Elise. He stood beside her, as an equal stepping into the final shadow. The engagement lasted 17 minutes. 2 of the 6 were lost. Sigrid was injured but survived. Lucas took a deep wound from metal shrapnel. Elise held him with her bare hands. We did it, Elise. Not yet, but we've bought the world another day. She activated the station's self-destruct. Soren had programmed it, only he could cancel it. He smiled one last time. You have to live. Someone has to tell the story. The steel door slammed shut. Elise and Lucas were pushed into the escape pod. Below, the station's lights dimmed and vanished. 3 months later, at a small house on a Norwegian fjord, Elise Wernhardt sat by the window, staring at the sea. The wind howled. Snow slowly melted. Lucas Varen, now walking with a cane from his still-healing wound, placed an envelope on the table. From the Joint European Command. They're asking us to lead a new special response unit, formed after the submarine station incident. Elise didn't open it. She gave a faint smile. You know what I'm going to say? You'll say, we don't need titles to do what's right. She nodded. And that's why we're trusted. Lucas lifted his mug of hot coffee. They sat in silence. No more words. But one truth remained clear. The silent war never ends. Only the watchers remain. And in that shadowed world, without lights, without medals, people like Elise Wernhardt and Lucas Varen stood guard, holding the line between order and chaos. Some of us are always here. You just don't see us, unless you know how to look.